LETTER the 30th of Life in Mexico. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Life in Mexico by Francis Calderón de la Barca. Letter the 30th. Christmas Day. Calends and Mass. Amateur performances. Solo. Posadas. Wandering of the Holy Family. Nacimiento. Crowded party. French cooks. Mexican cook. State of household. New Year's Day. Mass. Dirtiness of the churches, etc. Comparisons. Private chapels. English club. Preparations for journey. 25th. Christmas Day. 1 year this evening since we made our entry into Mexico. What a different aspect everything has assumed to us in 1 year! Then every object was new, every face that of a stranger. Now we are surrounded by familiar sights and sounds, and above all by friendly faces. But though novelty, which has its charms and its disagréments, has gone, nothing in Mexico even appears commonplace. Everything is on so large a scale, and everything so picturesque. Then there is so much interest attached to its old buildings, so much to see, even though there are no sights and no show places, unless we are to put in that class the Minera, Museum, Cathedral, University, and Botanic Garden, usually visited by travellers, that at whatever period we may leave it, I feel convinced we shall regret some point of interest that we have left unvisited. Some days ago colored cards printed in gilt letters were sent round, inviting all the Senator's friends to the Mass in this form: J.E.B.O.G. requests that you will honour him with your presence and that of your family in the solemn function of Calends and Mass, with which he annually makes an humble remembrance of the birth of the Saviour, which festivity will take place on the morning of the 24th of this month, at 9 o'clock in the parish church of the Sagrario of the Holy Cathedral. Mexico, December 1840. By 9 we were all assembled in the choir, Don B.O. in his uniform dark blue and gold, we in mantillas. The church looked very splendid, and, as usual on these occasions, no léperos were admitted, therefore the crowd was very elegant and select. The affair went off brilliantly. 4 or 5 of the girls and several of the married women have superb voices, and not one of all those who sang in chorus had a bad voice. The finest I almost ever heard is that of the Señorita C. Were she to study in Italy, I venture to predict that she might rival Grisi. Such depth, power, extension, and sweetness, with such richness of tone in the upper notes, are very rarely united. She sang a solo in such tones that I thought the people below must have been inclined to applaud. There are others whose voices are much more cultivated, and who have infinitely more science. I speak only of the raw material. The orchestra was really good, and led by a first-rate musician. I was thankful when my part of the entertainment was over, and I could give an individual attention to the others. The celebration lasted 4 hours, but there was rather a long sermon. You will shortly receive a detailed account of the whole, which is to be published in the Mexican Annual, called "The Ladies' Guide." In the evening we went to the house of the Marquesa de V o to spend the Christmas Eve. On this night all the relations and intimate friends of such family assemble in the house of the head of the clan, a real gathering, and in the present case to the number of 50 or 60 persons. This is the last night of what are called the posadas, a curious mixture of religion and amusement, but extremely pretty. The meaning is this: at the time when the decree went forth from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed, the Virgin and Joseph, having come out of Galilee to Judea to be inscribed for the taxation, found Bethlehem so full of people who had arrived from all parts of the world, that they wandered about for 9 days without finding admittance in any house or tavern, and on the 9th day took shelter in a manger where the Saviour was born. For 8 days this wandering of the Holy Family to the different posadas is represented, and seems more intended for an amusement to the children than anything serious. We went to the Marquesa's at 8 o'clock, and about 9 the ceremony commenced. A lighted taper is put into the hand of each lady, and a procession was formed, two by two, which marched all through the house, the corridors and walls of which were all decorated with evergreens and lamps, the whole party singing the litanies. K walked with the Dowager Marquesa, and a group of little children dressed as angels joined the procession. They wore little robes of silver or gold llama, plumes of white feathers, and a profusion of fine diamonds and pearls in bandeaux, brooches and necklaces, white gauze wings, and white satin shoes embroidered in gold. At last the procession drew up before a door, and a shower of fireworks was sent flying over our heads, I suppose to represent the descent of the angels, for a group of ladies appeared, dressed to represent the shepherds who watched their flocks by night upon the plains of Bethlehem. Then voices, supposed to be those of Mary and Joseph, struck up a hymn, in which they begged for admittance, saying that the night was cold and dark, that the wind blew hard, and that they prayed for a night's shelter. A chorus of voices from within refused admittance. Again those without entreated shelter, and at length declared that she at the door, who thus wandered in the night, and had not where to lay her head, was the Queen of Heaven. At this name the doors were thrown wide open, and the Holy Family entered singing. The scene within was very pretty, a nacimiento. Platforms going all around the room were covered with moss, on which were disposed groups of wax figures, generally representing passages from different parts of the New Testament, though sometimes they began with Adam and Eve in Paradise. There was the Annunciation, the salutation of Mary to Elizabeth, the wise men of the East, the shepherds, the flight into Egypt. There were green trees and fruit trees, and little fountains that cast up fairy columns of water, and flocks of sheep, and a little cradle in which to lay the infant Christ. One of the angels held a waxen baby in her arms. The whole was lighted very brilliantly, and ornamented with flowers and garlands. A padre took the baby from the angel and placed it in the cradle, and the posada was completed. We then returned to the drawing room, angels, shepherds, and all, and danced till supper time. The supper was a show for sweetmeats and cakes. Today, with the exception of there being no service in all the churches, Christmas is not kept in any remarkable way. We are spending this evening alone and very quietly. Tomorrow we have a soirée. I have letters from C n from Cuernavaca, delighted with the beauties of Tierra Caliente, and living amongst roses and orange trees. I hope that in January we shall be able to go there, in case anything should occur to induce us to leave Mexico before next winter. 27th. We had a very crowded party last evening, I think the best we have had yet, a fact which I mention because I triumph in my opinion that these weekly parties would succeed in Mexico having proved correct. I have lately been engaged in search of a cook, with as much pertinacity as Japheth in search of his father, and with as little success as he had in his preliminary inquiries. One, a Frenchman, I found out, had been tried for murder, another was said to be deranged, a third, who announced himself as the greatest artiste who had yet condescended to visit Mexico, demanded a salary which he considered suitable to his abilities. I tried a female Mexican in spite of her flowing hair. She seemed a decent woman and tolerable cook, and although our French housekeeper and Prime Minister had deserted us at our utmost need, we ventured to leave the house and to spend the day at Tacubaya. On our return found the whole establishment unable to stand. Cook tipsy, soldiers ditto, Galopin slightly intoxicated, in short, the house taking care of itself, no standing force but the coachman and footman, who have been with us some time and appear to be excellent servants. I am, however, promised a good Mexican housekeeper, and trust that some order will be established under her government. Also a Chinese cook with a celestial character. Letters from Spain announcing the speedy arrival of a secretary of legation and another attaché. 1st January, 1841. A happy new year to all. We began it by attending early mass in San Francisco, about the cleanest church in Mexico, and most frequented by the better classes. There you may have the good fortune to play